This is Wellness Buds, and I'm your host, Stella Wingfield.
And I'm Laura.
This episode is inspired by the following quote. I'm not blaming penises for the orgasm gap, nor am I blaming the men who own them. I'm also not blaming the women who have sex with the men who own them. The orgasm gap is a cultural problem. Lori Mintz. Last week, we talked a lot about consent. This week, we'll be more focused on the pleasure aspect of the principles of pleasure and also the orgasm gap. The orgasm gap is a super sad representation of how society views the importance of female pleasure. As the quote of the day poignantly said, I don't think it is a male or female or wherever you land on the gender spectrum, but rather a societal or cultural problem. And I think Principles of Pleasure did a great job illuminating that. Yes, this is a societal problem, especially when our sex education throughout school systems fail to teach us about the anatomy of women, and society tends to have a double standard of slut-shaming women who want sexual encounters, yet glorify men who want the same. I feel like it's no wonder why so many women feel shame about wanting pleasure, let alone vocalizing it to their partners. So yeah, I don't know, maybe we can start about the sex education part of that. I thought it was very interesting that the Principles of Pleasure started off with can you name all the parts of your anatomy? Do you know what the vulva is?
Mm-hmm.
My sexual education teacher did not teach that at all.
No, mine did not. I don't think I had sex ed. I had the no means no talk, and then my mom did most of my sex ed. I don't think I had that in school.
Oh, I had sex ed in school that was taught by our PE teacher, who was super, there wasn't much discussion about anything. It was just this is what it is. These are the parts, this is an erect penis, this is a flaccid penis, and the parts of the vagina a little bit. I remember having to label things, but to be honest, before watching The Principles of Pleasure, I would not have known that the whole thing is considered the vulva. I didn't learn that.
I didn't, or even if I did, I learned it one time and then it was never talked about again. And that's just not how it should work.
Yeah, I agree. I feel there just could have been so much more of a conversation about all of it.
But I think that is what you see in culture is the lack of sex education on a female perspective. And then what little sex education there is has way more to do with penises, condoms specific for males. And I don't think they even talk about porn in sex ed.
Mm-mm. They talk more about the dangers, I feel like.
Yeah.
All the statistics about STDs or STIs and very to the point of the penis goes inside of the vagina to fertilize the egg, and that's how a woman gets pregnant. But yeah, definitely nothing about the pleasure aspect or porn. Didn't learn shit about that.
Yeah, and when they don't talk about porn, then teenagers, most of the time teenagers when that happens, go and look at porn, which is as they address 90% about male pleasure and from male perspectives and geared to what males want to see. And it's okay, but now you told women that's the norm.
Right.
Because no one has a discussion that porn is geared to men.
Yeah, totally. And I feel it also sets such an unrealistic expectation of what sex is supposed to look like when it's it does not look like that.
Yeah, sex ed should talk about it not being reality.
Yeah, you don't have to choke women or be super violent toward them. That isn't necessarily normal. If you want that, that's chill. But it doesn't have to be like that. And I feel a lot of those videos are very, I don't know any other word other than just violent toward women. A woman coming vaginally, which isn't even necessarily how most women come, even though that can happen, but it's like it definitely is not realistic
At all.
at all. Yeah, porn
But then
is
it's like,
something else.
I feel like women get this bad rep that like, well, they just don't watch as much porn, they're not as sexual, blah blah blah, and it's like it's literally not geared for my enjoyment.
Yeah.
And it, like, there's a reason it's not enjoyable, because I'm not a dude. I don't want to like think about these vulgar things happening to a woman.
I know. It is so impressionable too on like young minds of thinking that this is normal.
Yeah, I mean, if we won't go into depth on it, but if you look it up, Billie Eilish talks a lot about how she thinks like porn really fucked up her perspective on like relationships and sex, and like fucked up her mind.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if my mind was a little fucked up too, to be honest, because
Yeah.
it's like there's such, it's just so graphic and so much to be taking in as a young sponge-like brain. You know, you
Yes.
just absorb everything, and it's like thinking that that's normal, and also, I don't know, getting off to this material that isn't even geared toward you kind of like fucks with your mind a little.
Well, and it also, I feel like, puts in a lot of that, like, you just have to keep going with whatever's happening in bed mentality. Versus,
Right.
like, no in the middle of sex still means no.
Right, totally. I don't think I'm not going to say any because I know there's so many different like little niche areas of porn, but
Yeah.
like how much is that truly represented or shown?
Yeah, I do think, like, there's probably a 10% that is correctly geared for both genders.
I know too, there is definitely like women-centric porn, but I only knew about it honestly because of Josh. Josh said that that was the shit that he liked, was just watching women get off. And I was like, I didn't even know that there was porn like that, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, it's a whole thing. And like, that was the only kind of porn that he watched. And I'm like, you know, as much as porn I think is fucked up in a way, I'm like, you know, not that mad that that's what he chose to watch, because
Yeah.
he definitely like has always been super like, that is his shit. Like, that's what turns him on, as a woman getting off and a woman having pleasure, which I feel like is so fucking rare for a man. And I guess we didn't do our disclaimer in the beginning of this episode, but anyone who doesn't want to hear about this, you know, sorry, but you know, it's just like, yeah, I feel super lucky that Josh definitely has been so female pleasure centric in our sexual experience. Honestly, to be 100% real, no one ever made me come before Josh.
Ugh.
So it's really wild, because it's not like I didn't explore different partners or have like my wild side when I was younger of trying to explore and trying to get pleasure. And I'm like, not like it felt bad, but it also, like, I just never actually got there other than with myself. So it was definitely a different experience. And when he was telling me like, oh, I'll definitely do that for you, I was like, yeah, we'll see. That's what they all say.
That's what they all say. I mean, also, with there being a disclaimer, I do think, like, even the two of us are like, okay, we're going to break our boundary and have this conversation because it should be talked about, but it doesn't make it a little uncomfortable. And on top of that, it's uncomfortable because it's only normalized for men to talk about sex, or sex to be about males. I feel like the conversation of like men masturbate is like saying I want French fries. Like, it's not even that unusual to hear in society. But if you said that about a woman, people would cringe.
Yeah, it is a double standard.
Just even the conversation about sex can only be male oriented to be like normalized in society.
Yeah. I think watching the Principles of Pleasure, though, it's like people are like laughing and uncomfortable because it is such a taboo topic and it really shouldn't be. So even though it is slightly uncomfortable, right now it's like easy to talk to you, Laura, about it. But then like the thought of like, oh, I am going to be releasing this to the public, though, and people will hear about some very personal things. And it's chill because it's a part of life and, we should be talking about it. And women should have pleasure. It shouldn't be a shameful thing to admit, like, yes, I want you to make me come. The orgasm gap is real and women should experience a fucking orgasm every time if they want to, So we talk about it.
Exactly. But yeah, I hate that, like, even the conversation alone has been male dominated for society approval.
Right. We're not taught to express ourselves and communicate with partners like what our wants are, what our needs are. I feel like we're always, it's like we're always taught basically to be people pleasers and to be quiet and take up less room and whatever. So it's just kind of a weird thing that shouldn't be weird at all to talk about. Like, I never even thought once, like before meeting Josh, to be like, you need to make me come, Or
like, I like this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, I'm just doing this for your pleasure, and never really thought twice about it. Except for like when a dude would ask after, like, did you come? And I'm just straight up, no, I didn't. I'm not going to stroke your ego. I never was the person to fake it. I'm just like, I'm going to enjoy it for what it is, but it also doesn't make me come, and I'm not going to lie about it. And I feel like guys would get so upset when I tell them, no, it didn't happen. But I'm like, but what did you do to try to make it happen?
Yeah.
For real, though.
Like, you didn't ask what... We'll just skip right to communication in bed, because we were just talking about, I think, like, every dude has always asked us,
always.
Did you come? Did you
At
come?
the end, like, did you?
And it is like, do we think they're asking because they actually care if you did or didn't? Or do they want the clout of they made you do it?
I think it's they want the clout. And I'm not going to give that to you if you didn't do it.
Yes. Honestly, I just get annoyed by the question. Like, what does it matter? If I say that was good, then that was good. Period. Mm-hmm. Let it be good. Let it be good.
But also, like... Bitch, you would know.
Yeah,
If you have to ask, it's probably a no.
Exactly. And, like, it is so... You just, like... There is communication, and then there's, like... Why do you need to know what result I got? Because you should know.
Yeah.
Because
you should know.
I think asking, do you like this? Or what position do you want? Or things like that are very healthy, normal bed conversations. I don't know what to call them. Pillow talk?
Pillow talk.
And, like, that is a really good thing in, like, getting consent through things. Because, what some people see as a kink, other people don't see as a kink. If you think it could even be a kink, it's a good thing to ask.
Right. And I feel like that was a good part of Principles of Pleasure. It doesn't have to be like so black and white, like, do you consent to this? It's more like, do you like this?
Yes.
Are you okay with this? Is it okay if I do this
Is
now?
this doing anything for you?
Right. Are you still cool with this? Asking specific things, I think, is way sexier,
Yes. Or like,
is this a yes or is this a no? Like, you don't have to sign anything or like make it super awkward. You can just like talk about it in like a what do you enjoy kind of way.
Yes. And like, I mean, I think like in the most PC of kinks, like, I don't know, without even going too far, if you want to slap someone's ass, like, in my past experience, when it comes to that, there's normally like the babyest tap, and then they're like, do you like that though? And like, they're like, but like, what if it was more? And it's like, it is funny to watch them like tiptoe to it, because they're not wanting to be like Can I slap your ass?
Yeah. Or just like going straight for like the big slap when it's like you don't know
choice
yet.
if you go straight for it. Like,
right.
I feel like that would be a turnoff, and I'm someone that likes that.
Yeah, make sure it's okay first.
Yes. Consent is sexy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think there's a lot of like thinking that it has to be a weird way to like go about consent, but it really doesn't have to be weird. It's only weird if you make it weird.
Yes. Well, and like we were talking about this with communicating and like asking about finishing and such. Like I had a guy who would apologize for finishing like himself, and I was like, why are you like sorry that you had pleasure and enjoyed it? You need to not apologize for that. That's just not something you need to feel regret or sorry for. Because also, it doesn't feel good to me that, like, it ends with you in regret that this happened.
Yeah, it's like a weird note to end it on.
Yeah, and, you know, I did tell them, I was like, you, like, don't need to be sorry about...
It's weird that you are.
...finishing and, like, doing your thing. It's really okay to just finish and, like... I think it was like, well, I want to make sure you're good. And it's like, if I'm enjoying it, then I'm enjoying it. Period. It's fine. Not every single thing you do is going to be a 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
nines
you
are
don't
not
have
bad.
to end it on, I'm sorry. I feel like that's happened to me a lot as well. But I think it's not like a regret that it happened, but a regret that it happened as quickly as it did. Like, I feel like guys feel a lot of shame if they come too fast. But like... if there are any men who are listening to this, we don't want it to last that long. If it's more than 15 minutes, like, I don't need that. I mean, like, maybe a half hour at the very most, but, like, that's pushing it, you know?
Yeah. If it's going to be longer than a half hour,
yeah,
let's hope I'm drunk.
It's just too much. It's just too much.
For sanity's
like,
sake.
Literally 10, 15 minutes. That's plenty. There is no need, I don't know where the idea came from that you need to be lasting for hours or going all night. My parts do not want that. They really don't.
No. On top of that, like, I'm not a big cardio guy. I'm just gonna say it. I don't like cardio. I don't need to do it more than 20 minutes.
True. I wish all men knew, though. It's like... and it goes back to the expectation of, like, porn lasting a really long time or movies or whatever is portrayed in media. It's like, it does not have to be that way. That is not real life. It should not be the expectation. You should not be sorry for coming in 5 minutes. Like, that's fine too. You know? It's chill.
Yes. I mean, on top of that, like, there are also going to be times where I'm done. And sorry if you're not, I'm done.
Yeah, it goes both ways. For me,
yes.
I have like a very like specific order of things that happen. Josh always makes me come first, and then we go to him. It's like very me pleasure centered first, and then we move on to him. That way we both can get what we want, and it's Gucci, you know?
See, I don't think that would work for me. Because if it's just me focused and then I'm like fully done and then I have to start the work for you, I'm low energy, dude. Low energy. I like working each other there slowly but surely and then trying to get there at a somewhat similar time. Because I can go for a little bit more, but I mean, to be honest, once I finish... you are on like a 5-minute timer of like, I ain't going past that.
I mean, but that's the thing too, is like different things work for different people and whatever works.
Yes.
Ideally, it is great when we do finish at the same time, but it's also, like just not the... Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that's so hard to coordinate that for me. And then I get in my head about like having to be there at the exact same time, and like my timeline is just longer than his. So to like ensure that it happens for me, it's just like, that's the way that it usually has to be. So yeah.
Yes.
It's chill. It's our little formula that works, and that's fine.
Yes. I mean, it is just hard. And like also different things work for different partners. It could work that way with you and Josh, and if you had a different partner, maybe something else would work better for y'all together.
I mean, I've definitely had the timing at the same time, and that shit is dope. It's just so hard to coordinate it because men and women are just different.
And like, who wants to feel like they're coordinating their sex?
Yeah, but it does kind of have to be that way for it to happen like synchronously like that. But it is great when it happens. It's just like, I am not a reliable, like, I don't have a certain time. Sometimes it could take up to a fucking hour for me to like get there. So ain't nobody got time for that on like trying to coordinate together sometimes. So yeah.
Nobody.
But that's the thing too, is like every partner is different, and like he's like, as long as I can make this last for you, the better. And I'm like, doesn't have to last that long. But I know for women especially, it's just like everything has to like line up perfectly in your mind and in your body to make it happen.
And you know, I feel like it's a good segue of like, it doesn't always have to happen with your partner specific.
Yeah.
There are tools.
That is true.
To use.
Sometimes lately, Josh has really been into the manual labor. And I'm like, but we do have toys for that. Like, it could be faster. And he's like, but I want it to last longer for you. And I'm like, okay, but sometimes...
15 minutes, bud. 15 minutes,
it does not have to last 45, man. Like, he's like, but I like it. And I'm like, you're into that manual labor, that's chill, but like, I can't have it all the time like that. Because then it's like, I think that's part of the orgasm gap too, is like women feel tired or just like self-conscious about it taking so long sometimes, that like, I think that's why some women do just fake it, because they're like, it's just easier and I don't have to like be in my head. I don't have to feel bad that we're like wasting, quote unquote, wasting all this time, even if it isn't necessarily a waste of time. But when you have so many things going on in life, it's like, okay, can I really dedicate all this time to me just taking forever? Like, I've definitely felt self-conscious or bad that I'm like, sorry that I take so long, you know?
Yeah.
So many factors.
Like, I don't even know that I feel regret sometimes. I feel like sometimes if it's like kind of taking a long time, I'm just like, it's just not going to happen today, man. I'm like at peace that it's just not today.
Well, I thought that was an interesting thing though in Principles of Pleasure, when they're talking about the discordance of things, of like the low correlation between the body and the mind, what your body is saying versus what your mind is saying. And like, that's why sometimes too.
And like what turns women on versus men. It's like 80% of the men is about physical
and
touch.
Like with women, it's a lot about like the mental game. So it's like just a very interesting thing to think about. Your partner could be doing something and your body is reacting like, yes, I like this, but then your mind is actually like, I don't actually like this.
Yes, which is weird. And I feel like I probably have had that happen. And I just didn't even notice.
I've definitely had it happen where my body is like, ooh, I like this. And my mind is like, I don't actually like this at all. I don't know why my body is reacting this way.
Oh my God.
But I feel like the other interesting thing from when they're talking about the discordance between that, then also talking about the dual control mechanism, which I thought was really interesting. Like how they're basically, it's like basically explains the discordance part is like, the one sex educator in the show was talking about the sexual accelerator, and that's the sex-related stimulus that's happening and your genitals are reacting, versus the sexual break in your mind that your mind is saying like all the reasons to not be turned on in this moment, and your genitals do not recognize or don't always recognize when you're like trying to put on the brakes. There's just so much going on in the female mind and not correlated with the body at all, which I think is just one of the many, many, many reasons why communication is so important in sex.
It is. And I just think it leads to, like, better sex, period. For both parties.
I think, though, it's just hard with women because we do have so much going on. Or, like, I know, too, they talked about spectatoring, which I don't know if you are guilty of that, but I definitely have been guilty of that in the past. And I feel like it kind of correlates too with the whole, like, I'm taking too long type thing, because you're, like, thinking about other things and you're thinking about yourself. You're thinking about all the reasons why you could or should be self-conscious or whatever. Instead of, like, being in the moment and enjoying it, you're thinking about all the things about your body or taking too long or whatever.
I've definitely been guilty of that in the past.
Very guilty of it in the past. Not so much anymore, but I feel like that was one of the reasons, too, why it's like, before my current partner, I never came, because I think I was just way too in my head. I was, like, thinking of all the things that I shouldn't be thinking about, like being self-conscious of my body, like my stomach's too big, my boobs are too big, and just thinking about all the other things instead of actually being in the moment, trying to enjoy, trying to actually get there, like... I just wanted to do the thing. I wasn't trying to, like, get anywhere, because I was also just, like, too self-conscious or, like, too afraid of being too vulnerable, too, which is, like, a weird thing to reflect on, because it's, like, you know, obviously everyone should be, you know, everyone's entitled to pleasure, but it's, like, if you're not fully comfortable with yourself, it's even harder to get there.
So much harder. And I think... that's the thing, is also, like, with the spectatorship, and women should communicate, like, what they want. I think a lot of women that haven't had a lot of communication in sex don't know how to communicate what they want, because, like, where would you learn how to communicate that?
Where do you learn?
Like, I don't, like, how do they even know what they like, or what they are and aren't okay with?
I think if it wasn't for Josh being super communicative, I definitely wouldn't have ever been communicative about it, because it's like, he was so upfront, like, this is what I like, this is what I want to do, like, I want to give you as much pleasure as possible, and I want you to talk to me about what you like and what you don't like. And I'm like, I've never had a partner going into a sexual experience actually saying that sort of thing to me, because it'd more just be like, we're just getting straight to it. There's, like, not foreplay. There's not anything. We're just, like, doing it. Where he's like, this is what I want. And we were friends before we got to that level. So I think that helped, too, of just, like, having a lot of communication and feeling comfortable and open. But I don't think without him, my, like, best sexual experiences would never have happened. Because, like, I wouldn't have known. Like, you're, like, who do you learn that from if not your partner bringing that into the relationship? And that's just because his fucking kink is women's pleasure. Like, fucking, I won the fucking lotto over here. Because I'm like, without that, I really don't think I would have ever experienced actual fulfillment and actual pleasure sexually.
Yeah.
Say it, girl.
You know, I think...
I was only laughing because Laura had such a look on her face, like she really wanted to say something but was hesitant, so that's why I was encouraging her and laughing, because her facial expression was just hilarious. But we will continue. This is part 1 of part 2, so we'll be diving a little bit deeper, and you'll hear what Laura was initially reluctant to talk about. But yeah, stay tuned for next week. We'll pick up right where we left off. Product of the week.
Pow!
This week's pow or bow is actually a book that I have not read, but it has been at the top of my list, and even more so now because of this episode, this content, watching Principles of Pleasure. A doctor friend of mine highly recommends this book, and when I was researching a little bit about it before making it the POW, I saw that it is highly recommended upon or from sex educators as well. So I have no hesitation recommending this book, even though I haven't read it. We will be on the same page and we can read it together. This book is called Come As You Are, and it is by Emily Nagoski. Either way, it has really great reviews as well, and like I said, recommended from and by sex educators. So there is the actual book, but I also saw the workbook on Amazon as well, so I'm going to link both of those. I think workbooks are great. It's a great way to reflect. Obviously, you know, we did the whole journaling thing and we're continuing to do the journaling thing, but a sex journal could be really cool too, to reflect on wants and needs and all kinds of cool exploration. So I will link that below. I want to say thank you all for listening. I appreciate you being here so much and being open and allowing me to be vulnerable and Laura to be vulnerable, talking about things that, you know, I'm a pretty modest person. I don't usually talk so candidly about such things with, you know, an audience, people that I don't know. So just thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And we will catch you next week. But also, if you have time to leave us a review, if you could share with anyone who comes to mind who you think might enjoy this content, please share. Also, we would love to hear some feedback. So if you have anything you would like to share, any recommendations for upcoming episodes, anything you want to share, like in regards to sex stuff or otherwise, anything we've talked about is fair game, or just anything you want to share in general. We're open ears. We'd love to hear it. You can DM us directly on socials, which are linked below, or you can call or text our business line at 971-292-5565, or email us at wellnessbudspodcast@gmail.com. So yeah, we will catch you next week. You can hear the continuation of our pleasure talk. Bye.
Bye.